Greetings everyone, in DevStream 151 DE released a page on the Warframe website that provides us, the players, with the stats for 2020 in regards to the usage rates of Warframes, primary weapons, secondary weapons, and melee weapons. Now, there is something to note, and I'll let DE say that to you. This aggregate covers all usage data from the 1st of the 1st, 2020 to the 31st of the 12th, 2020. The percentages presented track the equip time for Warframes and weapons that will rank 30 or higher. This omits time spent leveling up items for the first time. This data is meant to pique the interest of community members and does not serve as a tier list or any other statement on item viability. In other words, don't sweat it if your favorite Warframe is at number 1, and I'll jump in here and add, don't sweat it if your favorite weapon isn't number 1 either. You know, everything's essentially viable to someone at this point, so there's no hard feelings. Anyway, let's move on. Firstly, I'm going to do the top 10 most used Warframes on PC, then the top 10 most used primary weapons, secondary weapons, and then melee weapons for PC as well. If I choose to, I may not. The video will have the most used PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch Warframes and weapons in here at the end of the video as well. So if I did add it in later, make sure to use the chapter system that YouTube has, and you'll be able to go to the specific platform that you play on if you want to know exactly the top 10 Warframes and weapons for your platform. Otherwise, you can watch the whole thing if you want. It's all up to you. Let's begin with the top 10 Warframes on PC. Wukong Prime is at number 1, mostly due to his rework, I imagine. Mesa Prime, Excalibur, Saren Prime, Korra, Volt Prime, Necros Prime, Wisp, Excalibur Umbra, and Rhino Prime is at number 10. The stats are pretty balanced with the exception of Wukong Prime. Wukong Prime's at 8.40%, whereas Mesa is at 5.7%, and then Rhino Prime goes down to 3.15% gradually. So from position 2 to position 10, it's a nice and steady decline, whereas Wukong Prime is definitely far up there. For primary weapons on PC, this is another one where a few weapons are definitely used more than the large selection in your arsenal. With number 1 being the Ignis Wraith, with players of all mastery ranks combined, 11.32%. The Kuvabrahma follows at 8.72%, the Aceltra at 7.95%, the Rubico Prime at 5.92%, Fullman at 4.33%, the Shadow at 3.13%, and then we drop down to below 2% with the Archiplasmal and Soma Prime sharing 1.99%, the Kuvacomb at 1.91%, the Basic Ignis at 1.89%, and the Vectus Prime at 1.84%. For secondary weapons, this is definitely a massive margin between the first and second, and then second to fifth. The number 1 slot is the Kuva Nukor with a percentage of 17.41%. The second position goes to the Catch Moon, which is at 8.80%. Then the Piranha at 6.62%, the secondary Tombfinger Kick Gun at 3.98%, and then we drop down to a nice steady decline in groups, with the Staticor being 2.52%, Kuva Brock 2.47%, the secondary version of the Rattleguts Kick Gun 2.43%, Lex Prime 2.37%, the Axtiletto Prime at 2.14%, and the Dex Furus is in number 10 at 2.3%. Lastly, for the PC stats, we have the top 10 melee weapons where it seems to be a pretty balanced and gradual decline. The Broken War is in number 1 at 5.88%, the Redeemer Prime follows at 5.40%, Skier Jati at 5.35%, Paracesis 5.21%, Cronin Prime 3.65%, Orthos Prime 3.62%, the Nakana Prime at 3.08%, the Plague Kripath at 2.93%, the Grand Prime at 2.62%, and the Stropha at 2.45%. And that was the top 10 most used Warframes, primary weapons, secondary weapons, and melee weapons on PC. Now, if you do want to know the specifics of the usage rates per Warframe, primary, second, and melee weapon, you can go to the website in the description. It's the same website as you've seen on screen, and you can go to the heat map per mastery rank selection. This will show you data points for each mastery rank per weapon and Warframe. So if you want to do that per platform, you can do so. It is available to you, but since I got feedback on my last coverage of this last year saying there's no need to read all the numbers, you can go do that yourself if you want to. I won't be doing it for you. Moving on to PlayStation, number 1 slot goes to Excalibur with 6.3%, then Wukong Prime, Excalibur Umbra, Mesa Prime, Volt, Saren Prime, Rhino Prime, Wisp, Necros Prime, and the base Rhino. For primary weapons, the Ignis Wraith once again is at the top. The Kuvabrahma follows at 7.66, Aceltra 5.98, Fulmin 5.07, the Rubico Prime 4.20, Boltor 3.69, Archiplasmor 3.33, Soma Prime 2.30, the Dread at 2.29, and the Mark I Paris. For the top 10 secondary weapons on PlayStation, the Kuvanukor is once again at the number 1 slot with 12.40% usage, and then the Catchmoon follows at 6.60, Pyrana Prime 4.96, Tombfinger 3.39, Lex Prime 2.90, Dex Furus 2.87, the Third Eye 2.72, the Axtiletto Prime 2.68, the Staticor at 2.48, and the Kuva Twin Stubbers at 2.39. And then for the top 10 most used weapons on PlayStation, we have the Skiajati at 7.17%, the Paracesis at 6.52, Broken War at 6.26, Orthos Prime at 3.92, Redeemer Prime at 3.48, Skana at 2.77, Graham Prime, Nakana Prime, Plague Kripath, and the Cronin Prime. For the top 10 most used Warframes on Xbox, you have Excalibur at number 1 with 5.80%, Wukong Prime follows at 4.83%, Excalibur Umbra at 4.43%, Mesa Prime, Rhino Prime, Volt, Wisp, Saren Prime, Necros Prime, and the base Rhino. For primary weapons, you have the Ignis Wraith once again at the top spot, but close alongside it, the Kuvabrahma follows. The Aceltra comes after, then Fulmin, Rubico Prime, Archiplasmor, Soma Prime, Boltor, Dread, and the Mark I Paris. For the top 10 most used secondary weapons, the Kuvanukor once again is at the lead with 11.82%, and then the Catchmoon follows at 5.66, Pyrana Prime after that, Tombfinger, Lex Prime, and the Kuva Twin Stubbers. For the top 10 most used melee weapons on Xbox, you have the Paracesis at number 1 with 6.70, the Skiajati following at 6.55, Broken War at 6.03, Orthos Prime, Redeemer Prime, Graham Prime, Nakana Prime, Skana, Galatine Prime, and the Cronin Prime. And for Nintendo Switch, we have the top 10 most used Warframes in 2020, starting with Excalibur at 10.99%, Wukong Prime follows, Volt, Excalibur Umbra, Rhino, Mesa Prime, Korra, Mag. We then have Nidus, Wisp, and Ivara Prime being tied at 2.14%, and lastly, Saren Prime. And then for primary weapons, we have the Aceltra, Kuvabrahma, Ignis Wraith, Fulmin, Rubico Prime, Boltor, Heck, Archiplasmor, Mark I Paris, and the Dread. For secondary weapons, there's the Kuvanukor at 9.92%, the Catchmoon follows, then the Third Eye, Pyrana Prime, Dex Furus, Tombfinger, Lex Prime, Atomos, Staticor, and Rattleguts. Lastly, for the video and Nintendo Switch's top 10 most used melee weapons, there is the Broken War at 8.60%, the Skiajati following, the Skana, Paracesis, Redeemer Prime, Orthos Prime, Dexdakra, Mark I Bow, Legion, and the Graham Prime. Anyway, this does conclude the top 10 most used Warframes as well as weapons in Warframe for 2020 from PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch. So if you're on either of those platforms, you now have that information, and if you want to go further, as I said earlier in the video, you can of course go to the website yourself, go and search the heat map per mastery rank per platform, or for all platforms if you want, and find out the very specific information that you might be looking for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!